have to believe that whatever life that you are dreaming of is possible.
You should treat your career like a full career where you have to show up from work because this is your job.
Try to figure out and pinpoint the reason why they resonate with your artwork specifically.
One thing you want to be really great at is building rapport and conversations.
Alrighty, we're here, brother. Let's do this.
You ready?
Let's do it, yeah.
All right, episode 1. Okay, so it's Jaroid Henry Hill. I'm here with Jonah Allen in the Jonah Allen Gallery. And we thought it'd be really cool if we come together and start doing a podcast, mainly for the visual artists that are not just creating badass art, but also trying to figure out how to sell and market that work. So what I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna talk a little bit about my background and how I ended up here. Jonah gonna share a little bit about his background and how he ended up here, just to get you a bit familiar with the both of us. So with that being said, I'm gonna let Jonah kind of like start it off.
Yeah, so I'm 31 years old. We're here at my gallery in Florida. I'm in Northwest Florida. I actually grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and I picked first up a camera when I was like 11 or 12 years old. But it all kind of started, my family, like I said, I grew up in Atlanta, and my parents were down here on vacation in Florida, and they bought me a surf lesson. And nobody in my family surfed, but for some reason they decided to buy me a surf lesson. I caught my first wave, and I was absolutely hooked, like full on addicted. It's all I wanted to do. And about a year after that, I picked up a camera. And so that was like literally 19 years ago, and I haven't put a camera down since. So ever since I picked up a camera, I've just been obsessed with making photographs. I've always been obsessed with water because when I got into the water, I feel really connected to the divine or to God or to spirit, whatever you want to call it, universe, or really tapping into nature. And that's always been what I've been drawn to. And so, but I grew up in Atlanta, and then I went to University of Georgia. I studied marketing. Can't really tell you what I learned there, but I minored in art, and I actually learned a lot in the art school, just learning how to like, critique stuff, and I painted, I was drawing, I sculpted, composition, color, took all the art classes, and that was a really profound influence on me. And then after university, so I was in Georgia, went to University of Georgia, so still landlocked away from the ocean, which is totally different from, the world I'm in now, which I'm surrounded by, the water, literally right here and in my gallery.
I'm gonna pause you for a second though. So like one thing you mentioned is like at how you became hooked when it comes to surfing and water. I think people don't understand. I didn't understand like how hooked you are when it comes to the water. I kid you not, like I would call Jonah and just like, can't talk. I'm literally about to get in the water. I'm gonna call you back. And then there's even some days where I'm like, dude, what you doing? He's like, I'm 20 feet in the air. I'm gonna call you back. It's too loud. I can't really hear you. I'm getting these shots. Gotta go. And literally just hanging up. But like when it's the waves or it's time to surf, like you think getting these pieces is one thing. I always say like the passion that goes behind these pieces is like people just wouldn't understand it until they like actually get the chance to meet you.
Yeah, I'm absolutely obsessed with like being in the present moment in nature, and I get that through, I sometimes through my photography, but I also get it from surfing and from just like kind of all these different things that I do in the landscape. And really the gallery has become a way for me to fund my creation process. It's like an infinite game of like, I want to create a life I never want to retire from, where I just have unlimited resources not unlimited resources, but unlimited creation. I can create whatever I want. And so that's the journey I've been on. Going back to like kind of like how I got started. So went to University of Georgia, completely landlocked. And then after university, all I wanted to do was surf. So I traveled around the world for like a year, chasing waves all around the world, like world-class waves all around the world. And then I moved down to Florida, where I'm at now, but it was never my intention to move here. I moved down here to be in a relationship that I'm no longer in. But I moved down to be here in that relationship. And I really wanted to live somewhere where I could surf every day. And the Gulf of Mexico in Florida is not somewhere you can surf every day. Not good waves.
All right.
There are good waves sometimes. It's just very fleeting. It's very fickle. But I saw an opportunity where through my artwork, I could design a life of that unlimited creation where I literally get to design a perfect lifestyle around the water, because that's my biggest passion is the water, and my art is just one of the vehicles that I access the water. And so I saw kind of that vision of like, wow, I could create this life on the water through the art. And so that's the path I've been on for the last 7 or 8 years of seeing that vision and having the clarity of like, okay, this is what I want, and then kind of building it and like honestly like manifesting it,
Yeah.
of like having the belief with 100% clarity and then like taking massive action to do that.
So let me ask you this, because here's the big question everyone gonna want to know: how would Jonah go from making no money, creating art, surfing, living life, to becoming a really successful visual artist doing like millions in art sales? What would you say is one of the biggest things you would say like contribute to that on your journey?
I think it goes, maybe there's like, not one thing, there's, I think kind of goes back to a couple different principles, which I kind of just touched on one. I think the first principle is having the clarity of knowing what I want. I think it's the first thing is like, no matter what you're doing in life, is like, the first step is you have clarity of vision of like, what is it that you want? What do you desire? Where are you going? Because if you're just, if you don't have clarity of vision, you just might be meandering and you might be 2 degrees off. But if you go for 2 degrees off for thousands and thousands of miles on a sailboat, you're going to end up in a very different place. So having that clarity of vision, I think, in note one is the first kind of like fundamental principle. The second thing is the belief that it's possible. I got very fortunate in that I had the belief kind of instilled in me from childhood by my parents. Even though my parents weren't artists, my parents weren't creatives, they somehow instilled a belief in me that I could, if I had a vision or if I wanted to do something, like I can make it happen with hard work and the right actions. So I think it's the second part is like you have to believe that whatever life that you are dreaming of is possible.
And before you go to the third, it's interesting that you bring this up because, as you know, over the last maybe 5 years, I probably talked on a phone, 1 hour phone call with at least maybe 3,000 visual artists. And what's crazy is the main two things I noticed to be the biggest problems is like they don't even know what they really want. Like even if you ask them, what's your financial goal? They're like, maybe 3,000, 10,000. What you think? But they don't even know like what they want. And then when it comes to us, like how committed are you? Do you think you can actually make this happen? So many visual artists struggle with like self-doubt. So you feel like that's something you never really dealt with?
Oh, I struggle with self-doubt. Everyone struggles with self-doubt at some points, you know. There are times that this past year, 2024, was kind of a season of doubt for me, more so than other years. So I struggle. Everyone has doubt, right?
Yeah,
It
we
comes
talk
in.
so much about
Yeah, it creeps in.
2024.
But funny enough, the third principle that I have in my mind, you actually already mentioned, it's commitment. That's the third principle, is you gotta have the vision, you gotta have the belief that you can do it, then you gotta commit to the vision. And when I was in university, I had a mentor. I was really into music and recording music. I thought I was gonna be a rock star. That was like my dream. I was like, I wanna be a rock star. It's okay, I'm an artist instead. So, but I really wanna be a musician in the band. And then I started working at a recording studio. And the owner of the recording studio, he was a mentor of mine. And his dad was also a musician. And his dad told him to never have a fallback, because if you have a fallback, you're gonna fall back on it. And that's just another way of saying commit 100% to what you're doing. And so I remember in 2017, I moved here to Florida. And then late that year, early 2018, I made a commitment that like, I'm gonna give this a go because of that clarity of vision, of belief, like I can make it happen. Like full commitment.
Yeah.
And then the fourth principle is exposure. Getting exposure to people, places, and things that change your perspective, expand your mindset, but really like exposure to people who are already doing the thing you want to do, right? Which is beautiful that we're here today, helping other artists, because it's a way that we can literally expose them. I wish I could talk to me now 5 years ago. I would have fast tracked so much.
Yeah.
But I didn't meet anybody at that time. But what I did do was I got exposure, not necessarily in the art world, but I've had so many different mentors in life, coaches, consultants, and mentors who have exposed me to different ideas, ways of being, ways of operating that have allowed me to implement new things into my life that have changed my life, and so also through books. It's all about continuing education, like,
Right.
and being And so then the fifth principle I'd say has to do with commitment, but it's also about like being it's like mastering your craft, like mastering and being obsessed with learning your art craft, of like making artwork, but also trying to learn mastering sales, marketing, and like storytelling. And so I think like when I really sum it up, like from like a broad view, like I feel like those like five principles, like I feel like that sums it up pretty well of like that is why I am where I am today, I guess, and where I'm going is because of those things, and because I'm obsessed with learning and continuing to learn and not giving up. The only reason why there's only one way you can fail, really, and it's when you give up.
Right.
If you expand your time horizon long enough, then
Now, one thing you mentioned is like that's one of the reasons I'm at where I'm at today. For the people that just don't even know Jonah Allen, if you had to tell them a little bit about where you're at, how would you describe it? Talk about like the prices of your work,
yeah,
some of the
yeah,
sales,
it's
some of the processes.
yeah. Right now, I average price of a piece is about $10,000. I've been very fortunate. I've sold multiple seven figures of my art in the last couple of years, just literally directly to clients and collectors. And so I'm in the process of building a team. I have a team here at the gallery, and so yeah, I'm really trying to, again, my core goal right now is I'm trying to get to a place of unlimited creation where I'm just focused on creating art and doing expeditions and making photographs and telling stories and everything else, because it is to have a gallery and to run and operate, this business. There's a lot of work that has to be done. So I'm trying to get to the place where I don't necessarily have to do all the aspects of that work, and I just get to focus on what I do best, which is making photographic
Yeah.
work. That's really what I want to get to. Yeah.
No, that's cool. That's cool. What's crazy is I remember when we first spoke, and then we was on that call, and I'm like, dude, you definitely know some things. Like we definitely gonna end up working together. Cause the first call we didn't even work together, if you remember. And then it was
I
you
said
was
I
like,
had, yeah. I said, hey, I got to circle back, dude. You know what it was?
no,
Wow. I remember. I said. So for context, yeah, maybe
it was
2021,
I can't remember. I know it was a
2022.
while. But it was either 2021 or 2022, and I remember we chatted.
I was about to launch my book project, and so I had to fund the cost of production of my books, of
Yeah.
however many thousands of books, which is was a significant at the time one of the biggest expenses that I was ever going to do, and so I didn't want to get started until after the book launch.
And I remember you been like, I'm gonna circle back, and I'm like, dude, I'm here. I'm gonna be here. I ain't going nowhere. Let's just chat when you're ready. And then that's when you circle back, and that's when we end up working together.
Cool.
For the first
Well, now let's give context about. So I told people about kind of where I came from, my origin story. Do you feel like I touched on it well?
Yeah, I think you cover quite a bit, and we're gonna definitely get into some details I think you left out, but we're gonna talk about
Okay,
it.
cool. Now let's give people context about like your origin story. Tell people about where you're from. How did you start Artist Rise? How did you start coaching other artists? What was the catalyst for all of that?
Yeah. So first, Jaroid Henry, 27 years old. A lot of artists that even work with me, even those who are still scheduling to like work with me, don't think I'm an artist at all. They thought I never even created art. Fun fact, I ended up getting accepted into this like prestigious art school called NOCA in New Orleans, Louisiana. Acceptance is for high schoolers, by the way, not even for like those in college. But acceptance rate like 6 to 9%. End up getting in. Luckily, in that school, I learned so much. I'm talking about from painting, sculpture work, photography, ceramics, printmaking, like everything that a student would typically learn in college. They learn it at the school to the point where like celebrities send their kids to the school because they have different arts as well, from like drama to music. So very advanced school. Me attending that school, luckily, ended up allowing me to get like a full scholarship to the Kansas City Art Institute. Here where it was interesting. I always knew I always wanted to sell my art. I'm doing all painting at the time, like large scale. Super excited. But I always knew like as an artist, I want to sell art. I want to make money. I want to be like the next Damien Hirst or Jeff Koons or someone that's at the top of the industry. Went to the art school. And then because I had the scholarship, they ended up connecting me with someone else with the same scholarship, guy named Ben. And then there was big, I didn't notice at the time, they're like, do not tell anybody about your scholarship. Just keep it to yourself. We don't want people upset. That's how it works. He was like, but there's this guy that graduated 4 years before you named Ben. We're gonna connect you. I get in touch with Ben. We're chatting. And I'm like, dude, I see you in like some of these galleries. You seem to be crushing it. I'm like a fan. I'm so happy we got a chance to meet. Like, I basically want to be like you. We have the same scholarship. You're 4 years ahead of me. And he put me to the side. It's like, Jaroid, I kid you not, it's not what it looked like. He's like, I'm in these galleries, but dude, I don't make that much money. He's like, I'm living in a house. I guess with some people he graduated. It's like I'm living in a house like 3, 4 guys. He was like, we all kind of like splitting bills. I'm in some galleries. Some I have good relationships with. Some I don't, but I'm not on top of the world how it seems. I got the press. People know me, but I'm not making money like that. And then that led me to go into like this crazy deep research on like who are the most successful artists on earth, who are not, what was the average art sales, how much do artists make, and I don't remember the exact number, but one thing that stuck out to me was like 97% of visual artists are just not making over like 4,000 per month. And I'm like, what? After that, on the fourth scholarship, I'm like, you know what? I want to be the guy that figure out like how to actually sell and market work. At this time, like online training, we're talking about 2015. So at this time, like online trainings and coaching wasn't sexy at all. No one was really doing it. So my master plan, and it still is, was like, you know what? I want to open like my own, I guess you could say, home for artists where they could come and they could learn and they could paint, and we supply all the art supplies and as well as the education on how to sell and market. So that was the plan. From there, I didn't know nothing about nothing, but I knew I always had this like instinct that like if you want to know something, just go learn from someone who already had the answers. I kid you not. On this was with Twitter like early, not early days, but like 2017, 2018 at this point. On Twitter, I found like a lot of people that was successful outside of the art space, just people that was great at marketing and sales, and I was sending them all like I'm talking about 1,000 tweets one night, every single one individually. Like, hey, just tweeting, 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 until one of them got back to me. A few months later, I'm still at school. No, I'm out of school at this point. So a few months later, so one of them contacted me. Like, hey, I seen your tweets. I seen everything. I commend you for your hard work to try to get in touch with me. What you got? The way I met this guy, there's at the time that his TV show, I think it was called like Blue Collar Millionaires or something like that. And I seen he was really, really successful. So he was like, what you got? Asked him a few questions. He was like, you know what? I'm mentor you. I'll tell you everything you need to know. So at that point, he started teaching me everything I needed to know as far as like marketing and sales. And the crazy thing is, everything he would say was so simple. Like this why I'm very big on simplicity at this point. Like his entire life, from what he eats to what he wears to how he run his business, was like crazy simple. Like no more than like 3 main key points. So one thing he told me, he was like, hey, how successful you want to be when it comes to helping other visual artists? I'm like, I think I could be the top one. He's like, if that's the case, this way it gets interesting. He said, you can't do 2 jobs at once. I'm like, I only want to do 1 job. He's like, you can't do 2. You can't create at a high level and teach also at a high level. He's like, you're going to have to pick one. I'm like, oh crap. So then that's when I was like, you know what? I started getting really deep into the education and learning how to sell and market work. So then that's when I like started to like paint less. Still was drawing like every single day, but I started going more and more into like marketing and sales. Crazy thing is, I started sharing a lot of information online. This was in like Facebook groups at the time, just sharing a lot of tips. And then a few artists just reached out to me like, hey, the stuff you send is interesting. I want to learn more. Or like, do you do any coaching or anything like this? No coaching whatsoever. Some of my earliest students, they probably even gonna see this. I'm like, we could hop on a call once a week and I like tell you whatever it is I know. They're like, I'm in. So I had like maybe 7 students that just came out of nowhere from these groups, and then we hopping on like one-to-one calls, like once a week. And I'm just like, no structure, no nothing. Like a phone call, while we on a phone call, I'm like, yo, I think you should just do this and do that. Do this instead, do this. Some of those students started making like $5,000 months. $7,000 months. And then it just started snowballing and growing and growing. And then that's when we started to put like some structure in place. Started having like a small team working with more students. Things started to scale up a bit. And then at this point, majority of the artists that reach out, they kind of already familiar with me or some of the students. They're like, hey, I follow that student that you work with. I just talked to somebody today. I was like, I'll show you a student as an example. And I pulled it up. They're like, oh, I follow that student or that artist. And I'm like, that's actually a student of mine. So she worked with me. And then it's kind of like keep growing from there.
Yeah, it's funny. We both took like 2 different routes, but we're right here. Like you chose to do the, you know, teaching artists and helping them that route, and I chose to go creation, and now we're.
Yep. Let's talk about how we met.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna start off first.
Okay, cool.
What's interesting, I knew like me and Jonah was gonna work together and get along really well because we go on a call, and he actually just brought this up right before this. He was like, dude, since we got on a call, the first thing you noticed was my aura ring. When I seen that aura ring, it's one of those rings where it's like, if you know, you know. So we get on the call, then we go on the call, and I'm like, that's an aura ring? He's like, yeah, dude, it's changed my life. It's an aura ring. So I'm gonna let you explain first.
Yeah, an aura ring is just basically it tracks, your heart rate and a bunch of other things, and it's really just data. So that way you can see data. Tracks your sleep. You can kind of see where your sleep's at. Tracks like your readiness, recovery, and tracks. One of my core values is like health, fitness. So like I really care about my health. So I had the aura ring because of that. And this was back like I don't know, like a couple of years ago.
This had to be like 21, 22.
Yeah, so I feel like obviously that their business has grown since then. A lot more people have them, but maybe back then there wasn't.
It was like pretty small. But one thing I knew, like if someone wear an aura ring, they take their life and their growth and their career. They just take everything very serious.
Mm-hmm.
Like they very serious about growth, health, progression. So when I seen that, I was like, dude, you on to something.
Yeah, so we hopped on a call so I could join the program, and I ended up joining some months after that, and then just through that, I love group coaching, but there's some if I can get a one-on-one coach, that's obviously better because then it's just strictly directly catered to me. So I'll hit you up and I was like, hey, what would it look like to do one-on-one?
No,
Is that right?
you leaving out a lot.
Okay,
So
all right.
here's this what happened. One day I get a call or so, and you're like, dude, last year was great, but I'm thinking about opening this gallery.
At the time, I had a warehouse space. So I had a physical gallery, but it wasn't in a retail area. It was by appointment only, and it's
more
like
like a little warehouse
district.
studio.
And it was like you would never know there was an art gallery there.
Yep. And
Like it was not a great spot.
Here's a big misconception I always get about you. A lot of people come there like, hey, I know Jonah's successful, but he got the gallery. He always been selling through his gallery. And I'm like, Jonah Gallery only had a gallery for like 2 years.
Yeah, I started online.
Yep, exactly. And even another thing people don't know is a lot of traffic and the people that purchase his work still see you online first.
Oh,
Like
100%.
I was just in here, what that was, the other day we was in here and a guy that walked in and you asked him, he was like, what brought you in? And he was like, I've been following you online for some time. And I thought now I'm in the area, I thought I'd come stop by.
Yep.
So getting back on track. So Jonah, we on the phone, he's like, dude, I'm thinking about getting a gallery. He was like, is it a main, I'm just put everything out there. He's like, is in a main area. It's gonna have traffic. I want to make sure that it work. I want to make sure it's successful.
Yeah, because it's risk.
Yeah, he's like, because there's a lot of risk. There's some bills that come with this. He's like, what would it look like to work with you? At the time, I'm like, dude, I don't work with anybody one-on-one. Like, I just don't know about that. You're like, well, just let me know because it's something I definitely want to do. I'm excited. Like, I'm still hesitant. I don't know if I should do it or if I shouldn't. But like, if I do it, I feel like I need some guidance on this. And I don't know if you remember, when in the initial beginning, I was like, this is how we're gonna do it. It's gonna be pretty much off the cuff, off the wall. We'll do voice messages back and forth. You send me a voice message. When I'm free, I see your response.
Yep.
And they were like, whenever we could hop on a meeting, we'll hop on a meeting. Mm-hmm. You probably don't even remember that.
I forgot about that.
That's exactly how.
Yeah, that's how it happened. Yeah.
And literally for a year straight,
Yeah.
it was voice messaging back and forth. Sometimes he'd even give me a call, and then if I'm in a call, I'm like, what you got? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You don't remember.
No, I remember for sure, for sure.
And it turned initially to like questions about hiring and then bringing people on and sales processes and marketing. But then before you know it, I don't even know if you even paid attention to this. Halfway through the year, it was just all sales. I have this guy who want to buy this piece for like 35 grand. He said this. What you think I should say back? And I just be like, this what I say if I was you. Then I get a text message like 3 days later. Dude, you wouldn't believe it. He actually brought two. Dude, $35,000 sale. Crazy stuff. This gonna be a great month. I'm like,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how it's been. So that was 2023.
That had to be 2023.
And
And
then-
then 2024 was a bit slower. You was still like you'll ask some questions here and there, but we used to talk so much. Like it had to be at least 3, 4 voice messages a week in 2023.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
2024, I think it got a little bit easier because now you're in your second year with the gallery at
Right.
this point. So then it was usually you'll come with like the big questions. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm thinking about hiring this person.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Right.
How would you go about it?
Yeah.
Or it was like a big sale. I remember you made the big sale to like the CEO, won't say any names, but you're like, dude, I think I got like a big sale going on. What you think about this? So it would be like really like the high level questions at that point in 2024.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you this, you don't know this, but how you think we end up coming together to work together?
How do we come together?
Yeah, I know the big thing that did it for me. Want me to tell you?
Well, I remember. No, I think I initiated the conversation. I remember I was on the phone. I was actually walking at the boardwalk, and I told you that it's a goal of mine. That I want to help. Like one of my goals in life is I want to become the best version of myself, and I want to share that person with the world.
Yep.
And when I really think about that question, like, hey, like, what parts of me? How can I help more people?
Yeah.
You know, obviously, I help people when people collect my artwork, right? They're buying a window into this place that I went that most people never go to, or have this connection with nature, and they get that connection from my artwork. But also, I could help artists, right? And so I really think about it as like, man, like I wish I could talk to me 6, 7 years ago. So who is it that can help the most? It's the artists. So I remember I told you, I was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What if we
Partner up
Partner
on
up.
it, what that'll look like.
Yeah, what would that be like? We started brainstorming.
I'm gonna tell you this. The thing that did it for me though, you won't remember this. But you called me one day and you like, dude, you always told me, by the way, a little backstory. You always told me how you invest in education and growth and things like
Oh,
that.
always investing, yeah.
Right.
Always like right now, like I always have coaches, and I think it's really important. Going back to one of the pillars, like the fundamentals I talked about earlier, is exposure. Like having coaches, mentors, consultants. I always have people in my life. Like I have a personal trainer for my health, right? I have Oura Ring. I track. That's just a measurement device, but like I've got a personal trainer. I've got a therapist I work with. I don't see him every week, but every once in a while, you know, I got like something big happening in my life. I know I go and I dig into that. I have, you know, I've got sales trainings. I mean, I'm right now in an ads training. We've worked together. I've joined other art programs. I can't even count on my 2 fingers how many different programs and coaches I've hired over the years.
What did it though is one day you called me. You was like, I'm thinking about joining this program. You should definitely look into it. You're like, you should look into it. I think it'll be super, super cool. That was already for me.
Oh, it's my business coach.
Yeah, and I was familiar. But I was
Shout
like,
out Dan Martell.
Yep. Dan Martell. He was like, I'm looking into it. I'm thinking about joining. I think it'd be super, super cool. And then I looked into it and I knew the investment of it. I knew like this is somebody who take their career very serious. Like I knew at that point, I was like, if you want to invest there, you take your career very serious. So I was like, anyone that's educating themselves regularly, because I know I invest a lot into education. Just even for the students we work with, I was like, yeah, we could work together. Let's make this happen.
Yeah, so here we are.
So now here we are.
So what's the plan?
So what we're gonna do on this podcast to give as much value as possible, we're gonna allow people like call in, ask their very specific questions. We want specific questions, like the nitty-gritty questions, to give you as much value as possible. And then me and Jonah kind of chip in and give as much value to give you some background we both invest over 6 figures strictly in education. I'm talking about like on marketing and sales. No one, by the way, that end up doing over 1 million in our sales stumble up there. That comes from extensive education, trial and error, constant improvement, and actually working through the weeds to make that happen. So with that being said, we allow people to throw some questions at us. We actually got a few people that's waiting that want to give us a call. So we're going to hop on a call with those people and we'll just give them as much advice as we can.
Let's do it.
All right, so first we're going to start with calling this artist. We'll let her throw her question at us and we're going to see how it goes. Let's give it a call.
Hello?
Hey, Larissa, it's Jaroid and Jonah here. You live on the podcast.
Awesome. Hi, guys.
How's it
Hey,
going?
hey, Larissa.
Can you hear Jonah?
Yep, I can hear him.
Perfect. So this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna let you throw whatever main question you have at us, and we're gonna kind of just give you as much value as we possibly can while we got you here. So what you got?
All right. So, my name's Larissa Davis, and I've been with Artist Rise for. I joined the end of February in 2024, so it's coming on a year, and I had some really great success. But I do notice this area that I still have questions about, which is conversations. When you're getting into the conversation with someone who has interest, they've expressed interest, but you're not sure if they're a buyer yet. And I do really well like following the script, but then there's a point where you have to figure it out on your own, kind of like, because you're in this unique conversation, and I can get hung up with maybe getting off track of the kind of the sale and the focus on art, and then the conversation just wanders off into something and doesn't always get anywhere. So I just would love anything that you can offer on that topic to make my conversations more successful.
Okay, let me do this. Let me repeat the question because you kind of gave me a statement so I can make sure I'm on the same page. So where you're at the moment is you're like, okay, you have someone who's interested in your work, you get in conversation with them, and then in conversation, next thing you know, it get carried away, and then somehow they end up not purchasing. So you're wondering, how do I keep that conversation on track and get it to the sale?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna let Jonah take it off, and then I might chip in as well.
Thanks.
Hey, Larissa, Jonah here. I think this has definitely happened to me before. And when I think about your question I think it really boils down to, I'd have to like maybe see your chats or your conversations to like really know more information to help you.
Right.
But
Yeah.
just going off of like generalizations, I would say that, you want to keep the conversation on track by asking quality questions about, keep it around the artwork or keep it around the reason, and kind of try to figure out and pinpoint the reason why a particular piece resonates with them, or why a particular, like why they resonate with your artwork specifically. And then also figure out, why they're looking for artwork, or even if they are looking for artwork, right? Because for me, there's kind of like 4 different things that have to happen to have like a quality, like purchaser. Like sometimes somebody will just buy because they love a piece so much, and they're gonna find a way somewhere to put it no matter what, because they just love art and like they just resonate with the piece so much. I love when that happens, but for me, that's not necessarily always the case. It's kind of like maybe a small percentage of the time. Usually, it's kind of like a process where somebody has to have interest in your artwork. Firstly, somebody has to be like, they have to be emotionally interested. So you have to figure out why they're emotionally interested in your artwork, and then they have to be, qualified to purchase your artwork. Have they purchased artwork before? Have they invested in their artwork before? If so, how much? Like, are they financially qualified can they afford to purchase your artwork? Third is like, is there any sort of urgency? Like, do they just buy a new house, or are they remodeling a house? Do they have this void of a white wall where they want to place artwork? And then lastly, do they see the value in your artwork? And if I go through all of those, and I figure out all those things through quality questions. And so I really think it boils back down to just like trying to keep it on track by asking quality questions centered around those kind of 4 things. Does that make sense?
And I'm
It
gonna add
does,
to that as well.
yeah. It does,
Jaroid's gonna say something as well.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. One thing I'm very, very first, was you able to take some notes pretty quickly on that?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Another thing that I want to add is that while you're asking those quality questions, another thing is you don't want it to be like an interrogation, right? Where you're just asking question after question after question.
It's a flow. It's a conversation.
Exactly. So one thing you want to be really great at is building rapport in conversations. And for those who just don't know, rapport just means building a strong relationship, right? Now, here's what's probably going on as well. You in the rapport building stage, so you guys having a great conversation, and then before you know it, you're off track talking about your kids and what happened over the holidays, right?
Yeah.
So here's what I like to do. There's 2 key things when you're building rapport. I like to keep the conversation about either the artwork directly, one, or the second thing would be why you created the artwork, which is the reasoning behind the work. So you can talk about the work directly or the reasoning behind the work. So I'm gonna just kind of like use Jonah for example. If someone come in a gallery and they're talking about the artwork directly, like how much they love the piece, then they might venture off a little bit and talk about where that piece was shot and the beach and how the waves connect, things like that. And then sometimes when it's happened, it could get off track. So they'd be like, yeah, I love the beach and the waves. My kids always love going to the beach, especially the one right here in wherever they may be located. Then next thing you know, we talking about kids, right?
Yeah.
To bring it back on track, I like to bring the artwork back into the picture. So I'm just giving a very rough example here. Let's say if they're talking about the kids now, then I'll say something along the lines of, yeah, do you think your kids will also love this piece as well, knowing they love the beach as well? And typically they'll bring it back to the artwork by saying, you know what, that's a good question. My kids probably will love this piece because I know they're fascinated just with the water as much as I am. This makes sense?
Okay.
And then you could
Yeah.
go right back into one of those questions that Jonah just mentioned and you right back on track.
And yeah, the qualifying questions, that's a good point. And I'm sure that's in the materials and I haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah.
I think you're right. You guys like definitely identified like the I get off track in the rapport stage. And
Yeah.
like you just said about not wanting, like I can feel like if the conversation's got a little lull, I don't want to sound like I'm just an interrogator and, asking too many
Exactly.
questions.
And one thing I want to add is like a little bonus because you initially mentioned that people come to you with interest. That's them saying like, hey, I love this, but they're not necessarily saying I want to buy.
Right.
If that interest build enough and you could tell they're very, very interested, I talk about this a lot. One thing I'm very big on is asking for the sale. And asking
Yeah.
for the sale don't have to be salesy. I can even let Jonah chime in on this a bit. But one phrase I love is simply saying, hey, if I was to make you an amazing offer on this piece, I could tell you love it. Can you see yourself owning it?
Yeah, I almost feel like I shy away from that and that I could probably bring that into the conversation a little sooner.
Make it a habit to bring it in every single conversation because every time you shy away from it, you missing 100% of the shots you don't take. I'd rather they
Right.
tell you no than you not get an answer at all. I'm gonna let Jonah,
Exactly.
I'm gonna let Jonah kind of chime in too if he has
Yeah,
to.
yeah. I'm just curious, Larissa, what makes you shy about asking that question?
That's a really good question because when I have asked it, it hasn't ever really been a problem, and it's always felt good because there's been a conclusion, either one way or the other with the conversation, which is the goal of the whole thing. So I think there's this story that I have about, not wanting to be pushy and not wanting to be salesy or something, and that plays in my head and interferes, and that gets down to building rapport and not being maybe enough in the business mindset of the whole thing.
So it sounds like you're sometimes afraid to ask the question because you don't want to come off as salesy.
Right.
Yeah, I think. I think something that can happen is if, you're not going to ask that question to everybody that you have a conversation with. You're only going to ask that question if your artwork's a good fit for them, or if the conversation's going well and it's like and trending in that direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it can definitely come off as salesy out of context if you're asking the question in a conversation that's really not a good fit. Does that make sense? But if it is a good fit, then 100% you should ask the conversation that really kind of goes. That's like back to like the belief, like in probably like yourself and your own artwork. Like you have to have the belief that your artwork is, of value, and that this person, is going to benefit from owning your artwork. Artwork is a very powerful thing, and you have to see the value in your own artwork.
Yeah. Yep. Totally.
And I'm actually saying one more thing. And speaking of, as far as the value of your artwork, try to like put this in your mind. Like this, how I kind of look at it, right? And it's the same thing I talk about. I say, think of one thing Jonah mentioned. It's just like when someone buy his artwork, he feel like he's giving so much value to the world, right? And you want to look at it the same way, because guess what? When someone buy your artwork, now they have a beautiful piece in their home that they're gonna look at every single day and bring them joy. So like when you sell artwork to someone, you're still doing a service. Of course, you have to be selling it to someone that it's a good fit for, kind of like Jonah said, like someone that you could tell the relationship is going well. They definitely want the work. They're interested, right? But when they purchase, like no one ever really buy great art and then be like, oh, I don't like this piece. Why is it on my wall, right? Because think about it, art is a luxury, so people are spending their hard-earned money on a luxury. And keep in mind, we only buy luxuries that we really have an emotional connection with. So you're actually doing them like a favor sending them your artwork, And you have to kind of see it as that.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that. I really appreciate the reminder. Thank you.
Yeah. Does this answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel motivated. Thank you.
Cool, cool. Well, we'll let you go. It was a really, really, really good question.
Awesome. Thanks for including it. I appreciate it.
No worries. You enjoy the rest of your day, Larissa.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was a really, really good question. We have another one. You ready?
Let's do it.
So this is Deanna. Let's see what Deanna got.
Hello?
Hey, Deanna. You're live on a podcast. It's Jaroid and Jonah here.
Hey, what's up? How y'all doing?
We're doing good.
Hey, Deanna, Jonah here.
Hey.
Can you hear
what's
Jonah
up?
pretty
Nice
well?
to meet you. Yeah, I can hear him.
Perfect. So what you got? Throw your question at us.
God, what are some effective strategies for an artist to stay consistent when creating work?
Good question. Good question. I'm gonna let Jonah answer this, but I'm gonna also throw in something first. So I'm gonna tell you a strategy I learned back when I was in art school, and I thought it was a really, 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 really cool strategy, right? So what we had to do when I was in art school is that everyone had to have this sketchbook, right? It's usually like a 5x5 by 8x5 sketchbook. So nothing too crazy big that you could carry with you everywhere. And then what we used to have to do, we had this assignment. My teacher at the time called it the water wheel assignment. So where you had to just sketch a lot of ideas, like try to get your brain rolling. You could sketch around about what's around you. You could sketch about what comes to mind. Whatever you're thinking about, you just want to sketch out ideas on paper. And then at the end of, let's say, the week, you would try to put the different ideas together and combine them to make one beautiful piece. But keep in mind, this is all in your sketchbook. This would technically be called thumbnails, right? So you'll be creating the beautiful piece, just sketching it out inside your sketchbook. And then what happens is at the end of that week, now you have all these little sketches, and then you have like this, what I would consider like a master sketch that you could then bring to canvas. And then as long as you focus on sketching as many ideas per day, you will never really run out of ideas. And then you also at the same time forcing yourself to be consistent in that process, if this makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, keep in mind, some of those ideas are gonna be absolute shit. Like they're gonna be horrible because you're not gonna be in the vibe or the moment for it. Like that's how all artists work. Like we have artist block, things like that. But overall, at the end of that week, you will always have a good bit of ideas to then make a master idea and bring to canvas, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Cool. I would love to say it was my own idea, but I literally stole that from like my teacher at the time back when I was in school. But I'm gonna let Jonah chime in because that's someone who have like a crazy creative process.
All right.
Okay. Repeat the question as well one more time for me.
Okay. What are some effective strategies for artists to stay consistent when creating work?
What are some effective strategies for artists to stay consistent when creating work? I think there's a couple things. Jaroid already touched on it, but really I think it boils down to setting a standard for yourself, giving yourself a standard of some sort of constraint on what it is that you're going to create. It can be a time constraint. You can be, hey, I'm going to, 5 days a week or 7 days a week, I'm going to do my craft for 3 hours, right? And then you stick to that, that standard that you set yourself. And like you just do it and you show up for those 3 hours or whatever constraint it could be. Like there's a bunch of different creative ways you can do it. It could be a time constraint, right? For me, what I like to do is I give myself creative boxes to work in. So I'm a photographer, so I use a camera to make photographs.
Yeah.
And so, okay, you're a photographer as well. So yeah, so what you can do is I like to give myself a constraint of saying, okay, I'm only going to shoot this type of subject matter. I'm only going to allow myself to use one type of lens, and I want it to have this sort of emotion, this sort of aesthetic quality, this kind of style, and I set constraints and I work in that set of constraints until I'm burned out by it, until I've made so many photographs I can't even stand to look at them. And then usually I have another breakthrough, I'll get another wave of inspiration. But like I work and like I'll have multiple creative boxes going at once. So I call those like projects or series. So I can tell you right now where I'm at in my life with my creative practice is I can tell you in the last year it was my creative practice struggled a little bit, but right now my time constraint is I do missions like photographic missions because I'm just trying to change my location. So I have a Sprinter van. So every Thursday night, the Sprinter van gets loaded up, and then I have a couple different tools that I use. But I go out on all day Friday and all day Saturday, and I turn my phone off, or I'm not on my phone, and I'm just present. And there's no messages or notifications coming at me, and I'm just present in the landscape, because that's what I photograph. I photograph the water, I photograph the landscape, and I go out, and that's my creative time, where nobody else can reach me. There's no other demands, and like I think it really kind of boils down to like setting a standard for yourself and sticking to it. That's at least, I think, and so a couple of resources I can give you, a couple of books. Well, this is one idea from an author called Seth Godin. He has a book called The Practice. I know he talks about, he says, hey, like if you have writer's block, he's like, show me all your shitty writing. Basically saying like if you don't have any shitty writing, then like you don't have writer's block because you haven't written anything bad. It's the same thing like making art. Like show me all your bad photographs. If you don't have any bad photographs to show, then you're not out there creating enough. That's one thing. But then also two other resources like literally like I'm telling you, if you read these two books, they're by the same author. You can read them in a day. Like they will change your life. They've changed my life, and honestly need to reread them right now. The author is Steven Pressfield. The first one is called The War of Art. Have you ever heard about that book?
Yeah, I heard of it. I haven't read it yet though.
Okay.
I heard.
The War of Art, and then also the other one is called Turning Pro. It's about being professional creative. Like literally, like those two books from Steven Pressfield, The War of Art, and then Turning Pro. If you read those books and you put that stuff into action, like what Jaroid and I are telling you, then like
Yeah.
it won't be an issue. And the thing is, like with creativity, like obviously you're not always gonna be inspired, right? But like if you show up consistently, like we can't like as creatives, like you don't necessarily get to control when you're really inspired. But if you show up consistently, like with the discipline, with enough practice, it's like a muscle. Then you're gonna get inspired more easily. You're gonna get in the state of flow easier.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, very helpful. I really like the point where you said like you can't control like your inspiration, but if you keep showing up, then
Yeah,
from my understanding, like you'll get that spark of inspiration.
totally. You'll totally get the spark. Like for
Yeah.
instance, for me, like I got to a point in the last, I can tell you for me myself, this I can just from my own like personal experience, my story. So like, where I live, so I've photographed all my works are at the beach, the sand. Like basically, I photograph the water from three perspectives, like this, from up in the sky, from the sand, from the land, and then from the water. And
Yeah.
over the last like 7 or 8 years, I have photographed the same beach. All my photographs are literally from the same stretch of sand. It's not a very big patch of sand. Like it's like I don't know, a quarter mile wide, right? That little geographical area, that's where all my photographs have been made. It's all the same location. So my creative constraint was, hey, I'm only gonna photograph these, the subject matter at this location with, a certain type of lens, a 24 to 70 lens. And I did that for like 7 or 8 years. And I've got to a point where like, I'm just kind of like uninspired by that location. Like I'm like, I see it every day at sunrise and sunset. And I got to a place where it's like, I know there's still good images to be made there. And it's a challenge, but like, I'm just not feeling it. Like, and so what I had to do was I had to give myself a new constraint, a new project. And so that's what led me to on the, 2 days a week, I go out in my van and I'm traveling around Florida to give myself
Yeah.
a constraint and a standard, like a boundary of like, hey, this is what I'm sticking to for my creative practice. And like, I think it's really important to have a really consistent creative practice because like that's where all the stuff stems from, if you want to, like you can't, sure, like it's going to be much easier to market and to sell art when you're really inspired and really passionate about it and really fired up about what you're creating.
I think a big misconception of art space is that artists take their artwork very lightly, and not artwork like their actual work that they create. I'm talking about the work of their art, like the process. So, especially being someone who's like taking a career serious and want to like sell work and be successful, you have to show up for the creative process just like how you show up at work. So, I give you an example.
Yeah.
There's been those days that you like, I just really don't feel like going into this damn job today. But you know for sure I have to go, right? So then you get up and you're like, I'm going. And then sometimes the crazy thing is midday through that day, your job or that work day end up actually not being that bad, actually end up being a good day,
Yeah.
right? So it's the same thing with your art career. Like you have to show up. Like one thing I know about Jonah is that he have 2 set hard days, no matter what's going on, that he's going out and shoot, right? That's what it is, inspire or not. And then I think you should have the same. Like this is for any artist. You should treat your career like a full career where you have to show up from work because this is your job. So if you say like even if it start off with 2 hard days, well, I know you mentioned you're a photographer where you're going out and shoot, whether you want to, whether you aspire to, whether you're not and you want to stay home, you like, I have to go to work, right? And then what happens is if you do that for let's say 60 days straight, every single week, before you know it, you're gonna start building what's called habits. And the next thing you know, it become a part of your life where it's like you can't not create. And then before you know it, you're one of the most consistent artists, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
John actually have one. We're probably gonna have you here all night. John have one more thing he want to say as well.
Okay.
Honestly, when I hear Jaroid say that, I really believe that um, if you want to be like an artist, a successful artist, like Joy said, you got to turn pro, be treated like a professional, which goes back to that book. But it's really kind of creating artwork like every day, like just a little bit every day. So that's what I think really think is like key. Is like if you have the ability to create artwork every day, then that's something that yeah, I think is really essential.
Okay, one more thing. My bad. Like I said, we'll be here
I'll be all night.
all night. One thing Jordan just mentioned made me think about another thing. One the same professor I had in high school ended up telling me. And I think if you take the same outlook, it'll change your view on everything. So one thing they told us is like the world is your oyster. So when you walk outside, think as everything around you could be used as inspiration. from texture to composition to colors. Because like as a photographer, you're looking at different colors and compositions and textures every single day. And it don't necessarily have to be the right shot, but a certain view could give you an idea of a shot for the future, right? So going back to like Jonah saying, creating every day, it could be you taking little notes throughout your day of stuff you just noticing around that could be made for the perfect shot later or so.
Yeah, for sure.
So just is I guess we just trying to say like every day you're in artist mode, and then at least set 2 days or so out your week to go full on and shoot as if it is your full-time job.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Cool. Does this answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much.
No, of course. That's a really, 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 really good question. So I definitely appreciate you from asking.
No worries. You guys dropped a lot of value. I appreciate that.
Perfect, perfect. Well, we'll let you get back to the rest of your evening.
All right, you guys enjoy the rest of your
Take care,
day.
Deanna.
All right, thank you. You too.
All right, bye-bye.
All right.
Dude, that was some really, really, really good questions.
That was good.
As long as if you get a, I feel like I was talking to another artist like early this week, and she was asking about our relationship, and I was telling her, I said, I feel like at a point me and Jonah then got to this point where it's like we're in each other's brain. So if I say something, he's like, oh, dude, I was just about to, I was thinking this. Or if he'll say something, I'm like, you know what? That'd be a good idea. Like we should definitely do that and do this. So with these questions coming in, we probably be going back and forward on the same thing. Because every time you say something, I think of something else. Then I say
Yeah.
something, and then you think of something
Yep.
else.
Yeah, those are great questions. If you're an artist listening to this, I guess if there's an artist listening to this podcast right now, and they want to know kind of more, they want to get kind of more of this, where should they go? What can they do?
So first, if you want to like get more of just information on how to sell and market your work through the podcast, you go to Jaroid Henry on YouTube. You'll be able to find it, and you can watch the podcast. And then at this point, we plan on making it like every single week where we uploading episodes to give as much value as possible. I know some students that call in. I'm so used to saying students because we work with like 1,000 artists as well. For those who like want to learn more about that, you can find a link and then do more research to see about working with us directly. But for just value and getting like as much information as possible to grow your art career, all you got to do is just start with these podcasts. And even if you want to call in, I can even put some notes below on how to find that information to even get on a podcast yourself. I think it was really good. Cool. Well, with that being said, we'll wrap this party up, and hopefully you enjoy it. Peace.